All right, Michael, we're live.
Wonderful to be here, Amy. Nice to be here with you.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited for this. You and I had the opportunity to chat in what I call the green room here on Be Live before we actually went live. And I'm so excited to tell the world about you and for you to tell the world about yourself. So let's see. I'm going to make sure that we are actually live. Yes, we are. Hello, Hassan. How are you? Everyone, I have a very special Rockstar entrepreneur here today, and he is Michael Strong. And he's going to be talking about something which is, to me, the most important thing that we can do as entrepreneurs, as innovators, as social entrepreneurs. And I'm very, very excited for everyone to learn from Michael today. I'm going to ask you to please share this video and specifically invite anyone you know who's a teacher, because Michael is a teacher. I am a teacher. This is going to be such a valuable conversation today for anyone else who teaches young people and believes in empowering them and enabling them to become the problem-solving innovators of the future in our world. We need this so much. So I am going to introduce Michael, and let's see, do we have, okay, Hassan. Oh, so glad to see you here. Wonderful. Hassan, can you share this in a few places as well? And so, Michael, oh my gosh. By the way, I didn't even start with myself. I'm Amy Carrier. I am the founder of Amy Carrier's Classroom here on Facebook, which is a virtual classroom that teaches entrepreneurship and career readiness skills to people around the world. And it's free. Anyone is welcome to join. And right now we have members in 69 different countries from around the globe. And that's a big change from when I was in a classroom in a school, just like Michael is today. But the work is so important, and Michael is an absolute expert and rock star at doing what he does. So as much as I love talking about teaching young people how to become entrepreneurs, I'm so excited to have Michael talk to us about it today. So please, everyone, welcome Michael Strong. Let me tell you about this man. I'm actually going to read you his bio right now. And let's see. So Michael Strong has co-created several innovative schools, including Moreno Valley High School in Angel Fire, New Mexico, which is ranked the 36th best high school in the United States. He also created Co-School, designed to support entrepreneurial teens. Yay, Michael! He is launching the Academy of Thought and Industry in San Francisco for the fall of 2018. He's also founder of Original Path, an online platform for teens who want to educate themselves outside the boundaries of conventional education. I feel like I'm just going to be a cheerleader for you this entire hour, Michael. That's incredible. He is the author of The Habit of Thought, From Socratic Seminars to Socratic Practice. And he's also the lead author of Be the Solution, How Entrepreneurs and Conscious Capitalists Can Solve All the World's Problems. He co-founded Conscious Capitalism, Peace Through Commerce, the Startup Cities Institute, and Radical Social Entrepreneurs. Wow, Michael, you've been a busy man. And I feel like normally I try to make a statement about the person that I'm interviewing in these Rockstar interviews, but Michael's work speaks for itself. I want you to hear from him more than you hear from me today. So I'm honored, I'm excited, because Michael's another soul in the world doing the work that I care about the most. And on that note, Michael, thank you so much for being here and welcome.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here, Amy.
Thank you so much. And it's a lunch break right now in your school?
Yeah, we're in Austin, Texas, and I'm in the makerspace. So we've got some students settling down, a new teacher, and they're not supposed to eat lunch in the makerspace, so they're more doing other things. There's a little bit of lunch going on.
A little bit of lunch.
Yep.
It kind of sneaks in, doesn't it?
Yep. But mostly we build things in here.
Yes. I love it. And I want to hear about Makerspace. Maybe you can plug that into what we're going to be talking about today.
Yep.
So that actually that moves nicely into the first question that I have for you. And that's the question that I always start with. And that is, where were you? What were you doing? Who were you with when you started to do the work you do, or when you became inspired to do the work that you do today?
Well, that's a good question. I really am an accidental entrepreneur. People say that I am still an intellectual. I used to describe myself as a recovering intellectual, and I have a friend who teaches entrepreneurship, and she says, Michael, you haven't recovered yet. So I love reading and thinking about ideas. I went to a college where we read and think about ideas. I started working in public schools in the United States, training teachers to lead Socratic discussions where we read and think about ideas. On one occasion, we lost the funding for our program in public schools in Anchorage, Alaska, and parents came to me and asked me to start a school for them. At the time, I knew absolutely nothing about business, and
really?
Exactly. And so I knew, absolutely how to do things in the classroom, but how to get people paid. I realized, oh my gosh, now that the school district's no longer paying me, we need to find a way to, go from A to B. So parents pay tuition, somehow teachers get paid, but it turns out there's a lot to do between those. So by accident, I became an education entrepreneur, and then gradually I developed this niche of creating small private and charter schools based on Socratic dialogue and entrepreneurship.
That's incredible. It's actually, your story is kind of similar to mine. I'd never taken a business class, and here I am teaching entrepreneurship.
There you go.
When your calling shows up, you just self-teach and learn what you need to learn. So you're actually, on that note, you're actually the first social entrepreneur that I'm interviewing in this Rockstar Entrepreneur interview series. And that's really exciting for me because you're doing the work that I care about most. It's why I created this virtual classroom where people are watching this today. So can you tell me in your own words, what is it that you do? Besides building schools, what does that mean? What do you do?
Well, so, the building schools is a big part, but I do a bunch of other things. So I'll try to keep it concise. In the United States, most schools are fairly conventional. There's a certain template, and really around the world, I think, high school in particular is designed as a place where you earn so many credits to graduate with a high school diploma and so forth and so on. While that's fine for some students, it doesn't allow for other students to spend as much time thinking and reflecting or acting and doing in the world. So I have created space in the schools that I create for students to spend a lot more time thinking and reflecting Socratically. We move very slowly and give them a lot of time to think and talk about ideas. And I also create space for them to go out and do things in the real world. Create real-world entrepreneurial projects is the goal. Beyond that, I spent a decade working with John Mackey, the CEO of Whole Foods, and we created a nonprofit that promotes entrepreneurial solutions to world problems. That's where we got Conscious Capitalism, Peace Through Commerce, Startup Cities Institute, and Radical Social Entrepreneurs. Through that, I have an extraordinary global network of entrepreneurs, mission-driven entrepreneurs around the world, and I can put together some of my students with some of those mission-driven entrepreneurs so that we can really scale up this entrepreneurial initiative to make the world a better place.
Yeah, and that's how it happens, right? It can't just happen in a classroom.
Well, and just doing it. I would say, to go back, in school, we're often taught to be passive. Good students, take notes, prepare for the test. I was brilliant at, memorize and forget tests. I could memorize the parts of a frog, go in and get an A on the test, forget it the next day. Real life is about doing things. And I would say from the very first school I did, it's actually doing things. And guess what? When you do things, you mess up. You mess up all the time, you make mistakes all the time, but the only way to get better at it is to keep doing it. So I would say in many ways, one of the reasons I've created so many things, and you were very kind, some people simply regard me as all over the place, is that, once you realize taking initiative is everything, even if you fail. I love Wayne Gretzky, the great hockey star, said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't make. I'm totally with Wayne Gretzky. Let's make the shots, miss a bunch, but you get some.
Yeah, and I think I love that. You say the quote again, Michael.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
It's so true. It's so true. And I think that that's such a valuable piece of advice. And remember Wayne Gretzky's quote, because this will help to lift you up when you're starting to feel, you're lacking the confidence, you feel like you can't do something. Remember that. If you don't try, it's not going to happen. If you don't take that shot, you've missed it before you even tried.
And in Silicon Valley, they say you fail faster. Many of the parents here at CoSchool are themselves entrepreneurs or creative professionals. And I actually had one parent who is an entrepreneur ask me, how do we teach kids to fail? Many parents go to a school and they say, how do you teach algebra? How do you teach history? How do you teach whatever? She said, how do you teach them to fail? And I would say in the entrepreneurship class I taught, there was a lot of failure. And go failure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So actually, can you tell me just a tiny bit more about that? How do you encourage kids to fail when they're brought up, being told don't fail, and they go to a school and go through a school system that prizes grades? And here we are as entrepreneurs saying, no, you got to fail.
That's a great question. So I'll do several layers of that. First of all, most of our courses allow students to set their own goals. And so we want them to set goals that they could succeed at, but then if they're not meeting their goals, then they can reevaluate their goals. And instead of describing that as a failure, like, oh, maybe you bit off more than you could chew. I would say in addition, it's really important for adults to model, uncertainty and figuring things out in real time. Even on the intellectual side, very often I'll say, I'm not sure about that. I have to think about that. Might be this, might be that. Most people, when they become teachers, feel an obligation to be the sage on the stage. Part of the role of being a teacher is I'm a know-it-all. I have to be a full-time professional know-it-all. And if I'm not a know-it-all, even for a second, I'm failed as a teacher. That's a disaster if we want to teach kids how to figure things out for themselves. So I think one of the things I love is I love to be around learners and people trying to figure things out. And we'll try this, try that. No, that didn't work. Okay, how do we get better at trying things we fail? And so modeling that spirit of let's try a bunch of stuff. Some of it will fail, some of it won't. That's okay. Then finally encouraging kids to go out and do things. And then if it doesn't turn out the way they thought, celebrate that. I love it that you went out and did it. So it didn't work. No big deal. You went out and did it. And especially in those early stages, I would say taking initiative is a muscle. It's just like building a muscle. If you never take initiative, if you're passive all the time, you will stay passive. And until and unless you start taking initiative, even in the face of failure, you'll never have the gumption. Sometimes, and this is not a friendly way to think about it, but it's real. Sometimes I describe entrepreneurship as being punched in the gut every day, day after day for years, which is not fun. But, you have to have the resilience. If a student thinks that entrepreneurship is, oh, I'll put something on Etsy and everybody will buy it, and then nobody buys it, they're crushed. Like, no. Your first failure is just your first failure. Wait till you get to your 100th failure, and then keep moving.
Right. Yeah. It's so accurate. Entrepreneurship is like getting punched in the gut every day. And it's true, because would you agree that becoming an entrepreneur actually gives you skills that you never, ever knew you would have? And there's really no curriculum to give you those skills.
Absolutely. And thank you for bringing that up, actually. We can have students work through there are a lot of online curricula for basic business skills. There's even a man named Steve Blank has a Stanford course on how to build a startup, which does a really brilliant job of helping people think about a business model using the business model canvas. So there are a lot of resources that I love, but yet at the end of the day, if you just do the academic work, you have not even begun. This is why I stress taking initiative. Actually, sales, something we don't talk about enough, is most great entrepreneurs are great salespeople. Sales is all about approaching people and being willing to be rejected and keep going out there. So I encourage students to do some kind of active, and especially with strangers. It's okay to begin by asking your friends to buy something.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a major step forward when you have the courage to go out and ask a stranger to buy something you're selling.
Yes.
And if you can get to the point where you can do that, and be happy, what's really tough is to be happy even if you've been rejected over and over again. One of the greatest experiences actually for me becoming an entrepreneur is while I was in college, I was a salesperson one summer. I did door-to-door sales of storm windows. And I remember commission only, compensation. So I would go for an entire week, have about 100 doors slammed in my face, sometimes very rudely. And then I made a sale and made $500 in one morning. And it's such a weird emotional roller coaster where rejection, and then boom. But you have to go to every door with a smile on your face and ready for this to be the one.
Right.
It's tough. People don't talk about it. I have a friend who's an entrepreneur who says that entrepreneurship is the best personal growth course you could ever take. Because you have to be resilient.
Totally agree. And I love your point to, the act of selling something, you're literally putting yourself out there, and statistically, you're going to get turned down. You're going to get rejected.
Yep.
And if you can be rejected, which is failure,
yep,
be rejected and face that failure, you learn something amazing about yourself. I love that.
I would add, by the way, that although I'm an introvert by nature, so it's rough for me, there are some young people who are brilliant natural entrepreneurs, brilliant natural salespeople. And one of the great things I like about providing entrepreneurship as a path is those young people can be validated early on. Richard Branson dropped out of high school and, now Virgin Airlines and Virgin Records and everything. But I would say Branson was a natural salesperson. Kid like that, let's get him out selling right now.
Exactly. I'm so glad you brought that up. The fact that the most successful entrepreneurs in the world that we hold up as being, the superstars,
yep,
almost every single one of them did not go to school for this or dropped out of school. So,
I've worked closely with John Mackey. He's a college dropout. He likes to talk about dropping out of college 6 times. He's intellectually curious, so he'd go back, but he came back. If I may use an expression, one way I've talked about the schools I create is education without the bullshit. Again, for a lot of us, especially entrepreneurs, we have no patience for jumping through meaningless hoops and, even, raise your hand, get permission to go to the bathroom. Like, come on, I want to get stuff done. At teens, Thomas Edison when he was 13, Ben Franklin when he was 13, Andrew Carnegie when he was 13. In indigenous traditional societies, the age of 13, you go out and hunt your first deer. You're responsible. You're part of a community. And we in school infantilizes kids. We need kids to take initiative, responsibility, go through, do stuff and fail. It makes them happier and healthier. So this goes way beyond teaching entrepreneurship. This is, let's lead an active life of responsibility as early as possible. Ideally in a supportive environment. So you fail, you pick yourself back up again and so forth. But, the taking action in the world, I can't emphasize enough. And school systematically, takes that away from us.
Yeah. So I completely agree with you. You have to take action in the world. And that means our students need to get out of the school buildings. Mm-hmm. And in order to do that, the schools of the future can't be built in a vacuum, right, Michael? So my next question is, this means that communities have to be involved. So what 3 actionable steps for my audience who are watching right now can you kind of outline to help them be involved in creating the schools of the future? Because we need them. If they're not going to be Michael Strongs, they have to play another role.
Well, I think, mentors are really important. And one of the roles that we play a lot and we can never play enough of as educators is basically matchmaking with mentors. And it's tricky because the mentor has to be an emotional match. They have to be, mature and responsible. If you don't want to put a teen with somebody who's irresponsible, they should have skills and professionalism. So likewise, I think we need to have more developed mentor programs on the educator side, and we need people in the community to really participate. So chicken and an egg. I would say the other actionable step is, encourage active sales of some kind. People can sell it, in front of their local grocery store. They can sell online. Encouraging students to actually take action doing it. And finally, the internet is so fabulous. Encourage people to go out and reach out to their people they admire. Steve Jobs, famously, when I think he was 12, reached out to either Hewlett or Packard and got a job when he was a kid. Just basically working as Hewlett Packard at the age of 12 or 13, completely unprecedented. When Wright's the CEO, if somebody cares about something, if a young person cares about something, we need to encourage them to contact somebody they respect out there, get on a visual call like this and start talking, build relationship, proactive.
Help kids build their networks.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I love your example too, because it's, I also have examples of kids who reached out, and some of them at first they thought, oh, this person's never going to respond to me. But some just said, well, they had no fear, right? So they were willing to reach out to that person who was, out of reach at first, and they ended up getting the internship and getting the opportunity.
No, absolutely. I'm gonna remember his name in just a moment, but there's a young man in my network who's a brilliant teen entrepreneur. You'll want to interview him. And he cold called the Shark Tank. Who's the Shark Tank guy, the famous one?
Oh, really?
Yeah. Remind me when the name comes to him.
Yeah,
but,
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Anybody you can put in the comments who we're talking about.
Yeah, he got tickets to a Mavericks game. This famous entrepreneur gave him tickets. And at the Mavericks game, it's so frustrating. But at any rate, the famous person waited for the teen to go approach him. And he said, and later he ended up investing in his company, but he said, had the teen not walked across and introduced himself, he would never have invested. And so the test that this entrepreneur made of the teen was, are you willing to walk up to me and introduce yourself? It sounds simple, but if you're passive, you're a loser already in a certain sense. I hate to be smart, but active.
I cannot believe I can't remember his name either. Actually, Vinny Yancey, if you're watching, I know
Aaron
you know who we're talking about.
Aaron Esau is the teen. He was hundreds of thousands of dollars in an online website when he was young. So Aaron Esau is just an extraordinary example of a teen entrepreneurship who then has promoted teen entrepreneurship projects around the world.
I love it. That's amazing. I would love to connect with him.
And now at the age of 20, his own venture capital firm.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
I get so excited when I hear these stories about teens who made something happen, because it's completely outside of what the schools told them they were supposed to be doing. And they wound up being successful.
That's what it's about. That's exactly what it's about.
Yeah. So, Michael, what then is, I know that you've been through a lot, because I've also worked in a school. Mm-hmm. And I know that there's so much that we're not even going to begin to squeeze into our 1 hour together today. But what would you say is the greatest lesson that you've learned from your journey of being an entrepreneur in the education space, and being just a social entrepreneur in general? What's that biggest lesson?
Well, the simple one is probably don't freak out. At one point when I was creating a school in Angel Fire, New Mexico, the charter school, on a Friday afternoon, about 4 weeks into the school year, a group of building inspectors came to us and said they were going to shut down the building and shut down the school on Monday. And I would admit that I was freaked out. We had several building inspectors come and had approved it, but this new set of building inspectors didn't like something, and they were going to shut us down. We ended up getting the governor to intervene. The building was fine. We ended up, being fine. But I would say very often, this is, again, beyond failure, it's you need to keep your cool. You need to be calm. You need to just, okay, we got a problem. How do we solve it?
Right.
If you freak out, you will lose it. So I always, whenever I'm faced with a situation that looks really challenging, often I tell myself, wait 24 hours to make a decision. I mean, sometimes you can't wait 24 hours, but very often, let's just give ourselves time to think through this and navigate very carefully and skillfully through a hard situation without freaking out. Because the other thing is, if you're freaking out, people know you're freaking out. And if you call somebody and your voice tells them that you're freaking out, you've lost it. So you just have to figure out a way to be calm and confident and serene and just, boom, keep moving forward.
Right. And that tip to wait 24 hours, that works for just about everything in life.
Absolutely.
Any decision you have to make, any, uncomfortable email response you need to send.
Yeah, high stakes emails, I always wait 24 hours. I may draft it, but I wait 24 hours before sending.
Yes. Yes. So that's I think the best tip, just as humans, we can give each other right now. Mm-hmm. So everybody watching, just file that away. Never, ever, ever send an email or make a decision when you're at the height of the crisis situation. So, I mean, there's so many different ways that I want to ask you these questions, Michael. And, I'm even looking at my notes here. And
Mark Cuban, owner of the
Mavericks.
Mark Cuban,
yes.
Yes, so we already saw Cold called Mark Cuban. Ended up getting tickets to the Mavericks game, and Mark Cuban sat across from him, basically on the court, and was not going to help him anymore. But then Aaron walked up to Mark Cuban and introduced himself, and now he's a VC at the age of 20.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
I want to capture and bottle that story, because he got all the way to the measurement of financial success. I mean, there's so many different ways that we measure success. But he got all the way there. He reached out to Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban opened the door. And most smart entrepreneurs and investors, they might open the door, but they're still expecting you to walk across the court.
Right. And just
they're
by the way,
not going to do the work for you.
I've gotten most of my great relationships by cold calling people, sometimes cold emailing. But, I met John Mackey, CEO of Whole Foods, because I'd cold called a man named Gary Hoover, who'd created Bookstop's first big box bookstore and Hoover's.com, a business information service. I cold called Gary. Gary and I got along well. And when I told Gary the kinds of things I was interested in with respect to education, he introduced me to John Mackey. But had I never cold called Gary Hoover, I would never have met Mackey.
Wow.
And my mother's a high school graduate. I come from a family with absolutely no, my high school dropout, so my parents are completely uneducated. I have absolutely no network. I've built an incredible network. I've known about a dozen Nobel laureates, dozens and dozens of CEOs, presidents, ministers. I have an extraordinary network, and it's all because I just reached out to people. And again, a lot of them don't get back to me. I probably reach out to, 10 famous people and maybe 5 get back to me, or 3 or whatever. More right. Now that, it kind of builds. Once I can drop names, then it's easier.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely easier. Yeah. So start building your network.
Yep.
That's the tip, right? So, Michael, what message do you have for our audience in regard to building schools of the future? What does the world need to hear from Michael Strong about building schools of the future?
So for me, the number one thing is it's fundamentally about habits and attitudes, basically what we're talking about. One of my frustrations is almost everybody conceptualizes education as curriculum and pedagogy and accountability. And yes, all of those can play a role. But I would say unless and until young people are building the right kinds of habits and attitudes, the curriculum doesn't really make a difference. That's why I emphasize things like taking initiative, being willing to accept rejection, curiosity, exploring ideas, thinking. So I encourage educators and communities, sometimes this is a community issue, to say, imagine the most amazing graduate you could possibly imagine. And they can be different. They're males and females and intellectually talented and entrepreneurially talented and creatively talented, lots of different kinds of talent. But what kind of human beings would really represent your ideals? And then if you look at it, those are almost always packed into some kind of habits and attitudes. So in our school, about 1/3 intellectual, about 1/3 creative, about 1/3 entrepreneurial. But what they share in common is with all of them, we want them to be curious, we want them to be resilient, we want them to take initiative, we want them to learn to collaborate with each other, we want them to learn to think critically, and all of these are habits. So whether the class is entrepreneurship class or design class or AP history or Socratic discussion, whatever the class is, beyond the curriculum and so forth, it's what habits and attitudes we're developing day in, day out. As a faculty, we need to be consistent. You can't have one class encourage curiosity and another shut it down. You can't have one teacher encourage initiative and another shut it down. You need to be aligned about how do we because all of us, if we go to the gym 3 days a week and then we, loaf 3 days a week or go to the gym a week on, week off, we never become healthy and strong. With everything that matters, it's consistent development.
Wow. I just want to tell our audience, love it. You're clearly an educator because you're making sure to get as much as you possibly can into the time that you have, which is brilliant. And so far, what's showing up in the comments is people who are agreeing with you and cheering you on and saying, yes, failure is important. Now, I just want to remind the audience, we're going to take your questions, and Michael's going to answer during the last 15 minutes of the show, or because we've been moving so quickly through these questions, we might even have more time for Q&A. So please make sure you are sending your questions in with the comments here. And if you asked a question earlier on in the show, just post it again now so that it appears up at the top of the list of questions that I have. I don't want to miss your questions. So, Michael, I know you've written books, right? Mm-hmm. And I know that you've really figured out how to build schools that work, that teach how to be successful in the real world, how to become entrepreneurs. I mean, right now, maybe you can hold up your computer again and show us around the room, because this is what's happening in real time.
There's some, you guys are on camera. What are you doing? They're making a circuit potentiometer. So we've got a little makerspace thing. Just to talk about the makerspace a little bit, it's a movement that really has begun to take off in the US, and it's partly because people have realized that in addition to academic work, which, again, I love the work Life of the Mind, people need to make things. So actually one of the interesting things, because you think, oh, makerspace, for the San Francisco makerspace, we might spend $50,000 to $80,000 because I'm creating a new school out there. It'll be gorgeous makerspace with lots of cool gadgets and tools. That said, our makerspace teachers started out using cardboard and having students make little models of gadgets using cardboard. And cardboard's cheap, you can get it anywhere. But the idea is, again, to make things and to design things. Even somebody who's got a really good 3D imagination, until you actually start putting things together, you don't really know how it's going to function. So again, on the theme of initiative, intellectual curiosity, with making things, let's start making things and see what works, what doesn't, mess up. Designers go through lots and lots and lots of designs. Actually, just to riff on the something that's really important in the creative world, and this is relevant to everything we do, is getting students to be really determined to build quality. So we can get students to create things, but the difference between a student creator and a professional is endless refinement of quality. And this might be especially relevant for people who want to work online and to make money online. My wife is from Senegal. My wife is an entrepreneur from Senegal. She makes skincare products in Senegal, sells them in the United States. But one of the keys is they're branded as high-end products. And we tried to find creative professionals in Senegal, but it was very difficult to find people who had the quality of packaging design and photography and web's high interface and so forth in Senegal. Even people had some good skills, and she also tried working with our students here at Co-School, and they had some good skills. But one of the things I've actually learned is, even with respect to photography, everybody takes a picture with a camera right now, but to go from being able to take a picture to commercial quality photography, it's actually a very sophisticated process. And so one of the things that I'm working on with our students is going from, yes, you're making things, yes, you're starting a company, yes, you're doing video production or whatever, to go from doing it and mastering the tools. Suppose they learn how to use Final Cut Pro, great. They learn all the makerspace tools, great. Learning the tools is really just the first step. In order to become a professional, and you've probably heard of Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours to become world class. Yes. If you want to make a living at something, you have to be really, really good, and you have to be consistently demanding of yourself ever higher quality, and you have to work with and compare yourself to the very best. So I would say that's one of the processes we're on, and challenges that I'm continuing to push is, okay, you're great, you're doing good work. How do we go to the next level? And until you're world class, you got to keep pushing. So this endless appetite for quality and perfection is, I would say, a very high level theme that I'm working on developing with teams.
Wonderful. It's I think one of the that comes up, and this is what you're talking about, is this need to achieve perfection, success right away.
Yep.
And that's because that's what the education system has trained our students to believe is what they're supposed to do. So, transferring that concept, that way of thinking into what you do, Michael, building new schools, how can we give, I just use this phrase, recipe for success. How can we give a recipe for success to the people all around the world who are interested in building either classes or programs or schools that teach entrepreneurship? How can it...
I lost you a little bit. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. You blanked out for just a second, but
Do you want me to ask?
No, I got the core of it.
Okay.
So I would say the first thing is, because the conventional system, even in most countries around the world, is a dominant factor, I think the first thing you need to do is to figure out, are you doing something within the constraints of the system or outside of it? And if outside of it, is it an after-school program, a weekend program, a summer program? Are you starting a whole new school, as I do? Or, you succeeded in creating an entrepreneurship class within the constraints of the system. I think you just need to be really realistic about that. If you're within the system, you need to be responsible vis-a-vis the system and deliberately and consciously, go beyond it. So if you have to check off certain boxes for accountability in a government system, go ahead and do so. But if your real heart and soul is devoted to, let's develop, great entrepreneurs with great initiative and resilience, all this, then go ahead and this is what we're doing. If you are a group of people creating a school, I think alignment of purpose is actually really big. The great companies, so first of all, everybody who wants to teach entrepreneurship should read lots of books and stories about great entrepreneurs and their companies, and including the failures. Obviously Steve Jobs, the Hewlett-Packard story is amazing. The Whole Foods story is amazing. Dell is amazing. Westinghouse, go way back. Anytime there's a big corporate brand, once upon a time that was a tiny entrepreneur. Right. And somebody started that, and reading and learning about origin stories and seeing what it took, because if you're serious about creating something new, you as an entrepreneurial educator should be ready to be punched in the gut over and over again for a number of years. In order to do that, you need to be clear about your goal, and you also need to surround yourself with people. People often describe business partnerships as like a marriage without the love. In a business partnership, you need to be aligned. You need to be working together for its common goal. I would say one of the biggest problems I see with both people who found schools and people who found businesses, get a group of people together, they think they're on the same page, 6 months in, a year in, 2 years in, 3 years in, they're not on the same page. They fall apart, and often it's very bitter. So, pick your direction, be super clear about your direction, your purpose, your alignment, and your partners, and only then. Actually, Hewlett-Packard, great story. Those two individuals in the 1930s got together and did not know what product they were going to make, but they knew they respected and trusted each other. So in some ways, maybe even before you do a project, see who you really respect and trust deeply, and then evolve the project around that.
Yeah, have you found a network of people doing what you do?
Well, it depends. Go ahead.
No, I'm just thinking, if here we are, we're providing value and teaching other people how to do this. So I'm going to be asking you about a call to action. We can keep it for the end if you'd like.
Yeah, no, I would say it depends on how narrowly. So Rehan, who introduced us, is an extraordinary promoter of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship education and education generally. And in some ways, I've got a large and diverse network of people promoting entrepreneurship, innovative ways to educate, and so forth. In another way, I'm very much in a position of needing to develop them. So I'll talk about one of the calls to action, Original Path. And I take it you'll send out the link. It's the maven.net/original path. is a new community I'm building actually with a number of teens. And the idea is to help teens who want to develop their original path outside of school to discover ways to learn outside of school. The first, and a lot of the content on there is helping people to see that traditional school is not the be-all and end-all. In terms of a community, I'm deeply immersed in a community of people globally who believe that entrepreneurship and taking initiative are more important than conventional schooling. So I'm kind of way out of the box there. But meanwhile, most people are very attached to, how many credits do I need to graduate, and how many points do I need to get an A? For them, it's this mechanism. And so I am, through Original Path, I'm helping reach out and help more people who are outside the system. Just to talk about some of the student founders, co-founders of this with me. One is a young man who was a student here at Co-School. In Austin, he visited from a public charter school in the middle of a month, middle of a semester, and the very next week he enrolled, even though his parents asked him to pay 50% of the tuition. So he got a job at a coffee shop, waking up at 4 a.m. in order to pay half the tuition to come here. And he is extremely passionate about liberating kids to do their own things. He's been a brilliant salesperson, lots of, I would say, brilliant failures, and now he's a great writer. And he's really, I would say, student-wise, one of the students leading the charge on this Original Path site. Another one, we've got a young woman named Ishika based in Michigan, where she was too advanced in 7th grade math at her public school, and she was being penalized by the public school for learning too much math. So her parents took her and her brother out of school over the summer, and now Ishika and her younger brother Vedant are homeschooling, and they are also working on this entrepreneurial project, Original Path, and they're producing great content. We've got a young woman named Miriam based in Atlanta, Georgia, who also was in school last year, did not find it a healthy, positive environment for her. So she's out and she's making brilliant videos and editing her videos for us. We've got several other kids like that. We've got Cody in Britain, who's homeschooling and wants more community and wants more entrepreneurship. So there are kids around the world who are trying to find ways to do it on their own, but right now it's somewhat difficult. There are adult advocates, but there are, for teens who are personally frustrated, there's no community, and that's the purpose of Original Path, is to provide an online community for teens who want a way to, find their own path as an adolescent, whether they stay in conventional school or not. But at this point in the United States anyway, it's, I would say, relatively easy to educate yourself outside of schooling. There are incredible resources, incredible online courses, and now we have incredible community. So let's just do it.
Absolutely. And I'm actually going to so I want to move to questions in just a minute. So Michael, let me combine my last two questions. And the first question is, what would you like to say as your final word? And then the second is your call to actions. We've already talked about Original Path. I'm going to put both of your links up on the screen. So everyone take note, write down these links.
Terrific. So just to finish on Original Path before going to the second one, although I say it's a teen community, we also welcome adults. I only have so much bandwidth, but I am happy to help anybody anywhere create schools, and I've taken phone calls from people around the world to help them create schools. And one of the goals we want is, a lot of people think creating a school is something, you need a great big government to do that or something. I know, I just did it. And parents asked me, I said, sure, I'll do it. And over and over again, I just start making it up. So I would support people around the world creating their own schools, and we want a community of people in the school creation business. And create a school. What does that mean? 5 kids, 10 kids, whatever. Then finally, currently I'm at Co-School in Austin. In January, I moved to San Francisco to open the Academy of Thought and Industry in San Francisco, based on the Co-School model. We've got a gorgeous 4-story building there. So anybody in the San Francisco Bay Area, please check it out. And that is, I'm working with Higher Ground Education, which is the leading chain of Montessori schools in the US, and we intend to replicate the Academy of Thought and Industry all across the US and ultimately around the world. So I'd love to help you create your own, and also if you want professionals to create a school, that's our business.
Wonderful. And I think that's such an important message for people to hear. Anyone can start a school. You don't need to have a doctorate degree. You don't need to have this extensive in education. If you see that there is a need and you have an innovative way of educating young people, especially teaching them how to be entrepreneurs, creators, and get them ready for future careers of the future, then take on the most important venture there is, and that is creating.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Michael, thank you. I see there's one comment here, so we're going to move into Q&A, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Please send your questions. Please post them now because Michael is going to be answering, responding to your questions. And we have this one from Ahmad Aziz, which is, here we go. I'll put it up on the screen. He says, if we have passion to do anything, we can do it. Am I right?
Well, I would say if you have passion to do anything, you can attempt it. Again, the being punched in the gut every day, you might fail. We should also talk about the concept of pivoting. You know, in the U.S., entrepreneurs very often talk about pivoting. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs who had a huge amount of passion. They went out and tried it and tried it and tried it and failed. And ultimately, they needed to shift their business model. So I think you need to have passion, plus you need to have a realistic understanding of market realities. If you don't have a customer who's willing to pay for something, you're not going to get anywhere. And so you have to find that intersection between what somebody needs. One of my favorite definitions of an entrepreneur is somebody who stays up late at night thinking what sucks and how to fix it. If there is a problem in the world where somebody out there is really frustrated, then there's an entrepreneurial opportunity to fix it. And so if you can identify something where someone's needs are not being adequately met somehow in the marketplace, that is a fabulous market opportunity if you've got the skills and resources to meet that need.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that's a really important tip. I actually put your words up here on the screen, that it's the passion, but you also have to do your research and you also have to do your homework and have a realistic understanding of the market you're going to enter. And that includes building a school, right?
Exactly. And you have to test your market. I mean, until somebody writes you a check, that's the other thing is you have an entrepreneurial idea, all your friends will say it's great because they're nice to you and they don't want to hurt your feelings until somebody pays money. And for me, what made the entrepreneurship real in the first school I started was when somebody actually pulled out a check and it was for $10,000 or something. When somebody puts money down, it's real.
Absolutely. And then it's time to get to work, right?
Absolutely. Then you have to deliver.
You have to deliver. Yeah, you've already been working. If you've gotten to the point where someone's willing to write you a check and believe in your vision, then it's time to deliver. Mm-hmm. So Fauzia, okay, Fauzia is here. I actually messaged Fauzia last night and today to make sure that she was here because I'm going to put her comment on screen in just a minute. It's long, so it's going to cover your face, Michael. Mm-hmm. So let me hold off on that for just a second. Fauzia is a woman in Pakistan who is so passionate about teaching young people entrepreneurship. She wants to build a school. So this is just the perfect opportunity. Fauzia, I'm going to put your question up. If you have a follow-up question, feel free to post that as well. Here we go. It says, can we start all entrepreneurial subjects in a conventional school? And what will be the results, or should we have to start such schools separately?
Well, that's a good question. And some of this may, it really depends on exactly what you want to do. I would think in a country like Pakistan, there are two basic models of entrepreneurship. There's either entrepreneurship for the local market, providing goods and services to be sold locally. The other opportunity is online entrepreneurship. And I actually think that there remain millions and millions of online opportunities. If I was starting, and actually I'm with my wife, I am starting a school in Senegal, we're focusing on helping the kids become digital natives, where they become very sophisticated online. And part of this is both skills, where it's graphic design or video editing or digital marketing, some kind of online skill. And again, the quality, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to train them to achieve world-class quality. And then also the ability to work through new problems. They need to be critical thinkers. So in terms of the conventional subjects, I don't know enough about the constraints of the school you already have, Fauzia, But I would say I would start with a cohort of your most motivated students, and I would see what it can take, however you can get there, so that they can start earning revenue online. And even if it was a tiny bit of revenue, and even if it's, maybe through Amy or I or Rayhan or something, it's tiny. But I think making it real, for so many students, school is jumping through hoops. And as long as it's jumping through hoops, it's really hard to change things, even if you're teaching an entrepreneurship class. But if you could get your students to do some online work, maybe for somebody friendly in the network, and we pay them $5, $10, I don't care what it is, then all of a sudden, in my experience, their eyes open up, this is real, how do we get better at it, how do we do more of it? And I would rather start with a tiny number of students and have them actually experience paid work and being committed to improve that, and then grow that, than have thousands of students and just walk them through a curriculum that may be just as meaningless at the end of the day. I hope that helps.
I think that's a great answer. And Fauzia, please respond in the comments to tell us if you want more information, or you can tell us more about your situation, because this is the person that you need to talk to. So I would love for other people to learn from your question and Michael's comment. So when it comes to building programs that are teaching these skills in the developing world, Michael, how can people do that where they don't even have a school building?
No, that's
where
great.
They might not have consistent internet access, which is the case in Balochistan in Pakistan.
No, that's a great question. So I think something you can do very cheaply if you have the spirit is, I'll call it the Socratic dialogues, but when we read, think, and talk about ideas, first of all, I ask students questions and want them to come up with their own answers. And it can be about, history or literature, more traditional school subjects. It could also be about biographies of famous entrepreneurs. And you could ask, why did this entrepreneur, do this? Why did they take that action? The goal is you want the students to think on their own about what led from A to B, and you want them to get in the habit of figuring things out on their own. I actually have an online Socratic dialogue with a 5-year-old that I do on a weekly basis, and she is absolutely amazing. And one of the things I'm most proud of is she is now asking me questions. And if you think about how unusual that is, in most traditional societies, it's very top-down, and young people are not supposed to ask older people questions. They're supposed to, sit and be quiet. I actually like the fact that I've got this, young 5-year-old girl who is more than willing to say, well, so Michael Strong, what do you think about this? Because that's the kind of gumption that will lead to truly extraordinary results in the long run. And so without money, what can you do? You can call it a club. Maybe instead of calling it a school, we should call it a club. And the club is how do we take initiative to get things done? Actually, I just shared the YouTube video with Alana, the 5-year-old. So if people want to see me leading a Socratic discussion with a 5-year-old, they can go to that link. And anybody can do it. I could, as long as people can listen and think, I can hold a Socratic discussion where I get them thinking anywhere without any resources whatsoever. And think of it as we are an initiative club, and our initiative club is going to do whatever it takes as a group to get to the next stage. And the other thing is for people to support each other, especially if you have no resources. There's no time for meaningless conflict. There's no time for whining, especially if you're in a developing world situation, you don't have a lot of resources. You need to create a group of people who are committed to self-improvement, committed to initiative, committed to entrepreneurship, and committed to doing whatever it takes so that they all succeed. Often famous entrepreneurs will say, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. If you spend time with whiners, you'll become a whiner. If you spend time with people who are out to make themselves better and take initiative, you gradually will become that kind of person. So you need to create little pods, little pockets of amazing subcultures. And if it's 2 people, if you and your best friend, start there. I'm a great believer in start small with really powerful energy and then gradually expand organically. Everybody wants to say, how can we train 1,000 kids? In my experience, we've spent hundreds of millions of dollars around the world and not happening. Let's start small and grow it.
Yeah, Absolutely. Michael, I tried to put that link on screen and it wouldn't show up. So we can put it in the comments. And I put Socratic seminars up on the screen. I'm so glad that you brought this up. And I think that this is a great note to end on, because I want our audience to know what a Socratic seminar is and how to use it as pedagogy, how to actually use it to teach kids. I know that was one of the titles of your books that you have. And I think that too many people don't know what it is. So can you take a moment and describe it?
Sure. The first, we read and think about books together. And so the leader asks questions. We've all read something together, whether it's a story, it can be a play, it can be a philosophy, it can be a business plan, whatever it is. We read something together, and then typically a leader begins asking questions to get us to understand it more deeply. And the goal is a deep, sophisticated understanding where ideally everybody develops their own view, and yet we are all basing our ideas on the text. And so we can, it could be, Amy, you would read this thing about Steve Jobs and say, Steve Jobs is clearly a jerk. And I might say, yes, he's a jerk, but he's a great entrepreneur. And we go back and forth and we look at the evidence and we decide what's the balance between being great and being a jerk, so forth and so on. But it's thinking and talking together about ideas for deeper understanding, and deeper understanding specifically of a written text.
Yeah, I love it. And I love Socratic seminars because it actually gives the shy students in the classroom, it gives them kind of a structured way to contribute their ideas or their perception of the text that they've read.
Well, again, very often, much of what I do is social norms. So sometimes when I'm training middle school students, I'll say, as a leader, what I'm doing is training them so that person A speaks, person B listens and thinks, and then replies. And it sounds simple, but it can take me a year in a rowdy middle school to train everybody to be patient and thoughtful. And once you become focused on this, you realize how few adult groups are patient and thoughtful. And most adults are not very good at person A speaks, person B listens and thinks, and then replies.
Yes.
But a lot more can get done if we listen to each other and think about it.
Yes. And our students will benefit from learning how to behave and communicate in a Socratic seminar setting so that they can actually do a better job than most adults do.
And they can become articulate and thoughtful, which is endlessly useful everywhere.
That's so true. Michael, thank you so much. This hour has flown by, and it's phenomenal because you ended up putting in a lot more information than we originally talked about or put in the outline of our interview questions. So thank you. For going above and beyond and sharing so much beautiful wisdom. And I'm personally extremely grateful for your time today. You're at school. You've taken your lunchtime. If your school is like most schools, lunch is really only a half an hour, but you've spent about an hour and 20 minutes with me. So thank you so much for your time.
You're most welcome.
And on behalf of everyone in Amy Carrier's classroom, all of my followers, the people who support the work that I do, thank you so much. We're so grateful, and I'm so excited to have you as my first Rockstar social entrepreneur talking about what I think is the most important solution to our world's problems right now, teaching teenagers how to become entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Amy.
I hope we can do this again.
Absolutely, for sure. Anytime.
Right. Thank you, everyone, for watching and for your questions. And I'm sure Michael and I will go back afterwards and look for some more questions. And if you want to follow Michael, there is a link above this video to his Facebook page. Sounds like he's already maxed out his friends list. So you can definitely follow Michael and pay attention to what he's doing, because this is a gentleman who's changing the world. And I feel very honored to have had this conversation today. I hope you all got something valuable out of this, and stay tuned for another Rockstar interview next week. Same time, same place. All right, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.